What is up, guys, and welcome back to OWL by the Numbers, your one-stop spot for all things fantasy Overwatch League. I am your host, William Drunk, and tonight on our return episode, we have episode number 33. We're going to be taking a look at this season's fantasy platforms, share some other resources that you should be looking to use ahead of the draft season, and of course, we will let you know who our hosts are eyeing in regards to this year's rookie class that are entering the Overwatch League and Fantasy Overwatch League for the first time. So before we can jump into the agenda for tonight and introduce you to my co-hosts, I just want to quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our return show and thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight are two close friends of mine. Honestly, neither should need any sort of introduction by now, but I'm going to do it anyway. So straight off his championship co-win in last season's Podcaster Fantasy Showdown, along with yours truly, we have Ramses. Ramses, it is so good to see you again, brother. How has this offseason been treating you?
It has been all right. Push the Point has been plugging along. We haven't missed a week since the offseason started, which has been harder for some weeks than others, but it's been good. It's been a pretty good time covering everything, just finishing stuff up. I just graduated from college, entering the workforce, so everything's hitting at once, which means, of course, I have to spend all my time focusing on Fantasy Overwatch League, if only to beat you guys. Happy to be here.
If only. You haven't really had a chance to beat me yet in that case, but things are gonna be a little bit different this year.
One of those weeks in the league where we played like 6 times in a row, but
yeah, there was some weird stuff with some schedules, but anyways. And of course, it would not be a fantasy show without the self-proclaimed fantasy god. I don't know how. Pretty sure that didn't work out too well for you in football. But we've got Big Head Ed, who is hot on the campaign for me to use that face as a Twitch emote. Ed, good to have you back.
Right? All right. See, Totem, now that he's affiliated on Twitch, he needs to get the Ed Head emote as his first emote. It needs to happen. Yes, I am the Overwatch fantasy god of this podcast. Yeah, I just am.
The stats don't actually back that up.
Actually, they do.
I don't know. I mean, if you're the
because I was in you guys. So in the 3 leagues we were in, because we were in this podcast, the league you were talking about, which you two won. We were in the Overwatch League, like host league,
which we tied in,
and then the whatever experts one that Blevins and Deathblow, which I won. So you got a tie with me.
Were you in the Discord league that we did?
Was I?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I'm asking you because if you were, I know. If you were, I know I took that one too.
Yeah, but so you get half a point.
Either
we
way,
get a half a point each. We get a half point each because we tied for first. I get a full point because I won by myself. And you get a half point for the other one because you and Ramsey tied.
I drafted Sinatra. Oh my gosh, I'm the greatest fantasy player of all time.
Actually, no, I did not draft Sinatra.
I picked Sinatra up off of waivers. Ooh, I'm so smart.
Waiver wire pickups are a part of fantasy.
Can we make a section for whenever Ed has a very, really, really like complex take? We call it 4-head Ed. Or 5-head Ed.
I will allow it.
All right, fair enough. But no, things have been going good. We've done Heroes Never Die. So we're coming up on 200 episodes. For the whole series. I haven't done 200.
Yeah.
I started at episode 100.
Yeah. That first 100, it's a lot. It feels like 200.
Yes. We started a new podcast.
We did.
About Hearthstone Battlegrounds called Tavern Tales. So we've been trucking along with that, and that's a lot of fun. And playing games, moving, all that good bejazzle. How's your off season been, Totem? You've been real slow.
Okay. There's been a lot of stuff going on. I've been getting into streaming a lot more here as of late. So I've been jumping back in, playing a ton of Hearthstone because of Hearthstone Battlegrounds, and obviously that kind of coincides with the new podcast that we've been doing together. But it's been an interesting off season in regards to content creation, just figuring out what sort of shenanery we're going to get in every single week. Because as Ramses mentioned, like some weeks have been a little bit harder than others, but we got a lot of cool stuff planned for this season for OWL by the numbers. And before we actually jump into the agenda, like I do want to let you guys know that on the next 2 episodes, we do have interviews with 2 of the different Fantasy Overwatch League platforms. So we will have Soul Drink from High Noon Fantasy on next week's episode to talk about all the changes that they have in store. We kind of got like the bare bones version that we'll kind of talk about tonight, and then we'll go into further detail next week. And then on the 21st, we will have Chris, who is also known as Foul, who does the daily Fantasy Overwatch League. So I have no idea what he has in store for us in regards to platform changes, but I cannot wait to see what exactly he's doing. And then, of course, like we're doing a lot of like collaborations in the off season. We are doing aggregate rankings with a lot of the other Fantasy Overwatch League podcasters, which we're currently in the process of doing. So we're going to be releasing basically like a top 100 in regards to Fantasy Overwatch League players. So the way that we're dividing this is we are going to have the top 30 ranked tank players, the top 30 ranked support players, and then we'll do top 40 in regards to the damage dealers for the 2020 season. So we're hoping to have all of that wrapped up here within the next 2 or 3 weeks. We'll have that info out to you guys. Maybe we'll like spend an episode kind of deep diving into the rankings themselves once we have everything averaged out. But let's talk about basically what the current landscape of Fantasy Overwatch League is in regards to the options. Now, obviously, this past season, there were 3 options, one of which didn't really update due to whatever reason, and that was Winston's Lab. Now, I do not know whether or not they're going to continue to update their fantasy side of things or the stats, so I do not have them listed as an option. So let's start by talking about the 2 mainstays that we do know of. So we got High Noon, which is returning for its 3rd season. And they did a recent update on their website in regards to, what features they currently have in the works. Now, it's important to note, like, we don't have full details on this, but Soul Drink will be with us next week. But basically what we know is they are launching an app on both iOS and Android. So you're going to be able to live draft on the go. Kind of like what Bob did at the airport. You can expect a beta phase for this to hit within probably the next week or 2, I would imagine. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, because there is another new platform out there that is specifically built as an app. How important is it for both of you to be able to make adjustments on the fly whenever you're not at your computer?
Oh, I'm going first on this one. I think mobile, having a mobile app is mandatory for any fantasy sport, Overwatch League included. Like, you need to be able to look. I've talked about this before. ETT, effective toilet time. The amount of times you make changes or you're looking at stuff on your phone and you just want an app that it fits the screen, because like I've tried to do stuff on highnoon.gg last year using their website on my phone, and it was just not
it wasn't
not
optimized.
feasible. Yeah, so you need it optimized for that, and then to have your own separate app. So like you can go in, you can draft from it, you can add drop, you can trade. It makes you more into the league. Rather than, and like the reason we probably had like no real trades last year is because people go in, set their lineup once, and then don't go back to their computer to be like, oh, I need to turn on my computer to check my fantasy Overwatch team.
Well,
Now you can putz around on your phone and find trades, find people to pick up, find people to drop, stuff like that.
right. I do want to note, Ed, I do feel like part of the trade deal this past season was, one, it was kind of a new feature added to High Noon at the time, but it didn't really necessarily have a clear indicator that there was something pending for you whenever you
There's
were
no
at that
notification.
area. So, like, there wasn't any notification for you to know, like, hey, like, you should head over here. You had to manually go in and check. And a lot of people just didn't really pay attention to that at that point.
Well, and that happened to me a couple times. I know with Ed, where Ed and I would try and send each other trades that neither of us knew we were gonna accept, but we wouldn't know until like a day and a half later, just because we would wait for the other person to find it. I know. I'm not. I agree with Ed that the app is mandatory at this point, and I come at it more from just like from the viewing standpoint of it. I can't tell you how many times where like I can't get to my computer that often during the day, but I would check stats during the games, and the stats on the mobile platform would be different than the stats on the actual desktop central site for High Noon, which would make it hard because I would be I'd be out and about and I'd be shit talking Ed the whole time about how I'm beating his team, and I'd look at the stats and I would go home and I'd be losing by 30 points. So having the mobile app and having like the standardized data across the entire system is going to be a lot better.
Absolutely. And, other things that we're getting introduced are more customization options. So, most of these just have like a little bit of a blip, not like full details, but, it reads that commissioners will be able to adjust, user counts, the size of rosters within the league. We can change point multipliers, restrict the number of roles on a roster, and more. Now, we kind of ended this season of the podcast, so to speak, because obviously there wasn't any Overwatch League going on, talking about like some of our desires for more customization options as a commissioner. Now, obviously, like most of the stuff that we set up, I just kind of put together and everything. But out of all of these, what do you guys feel like is going to bring the most like challenge or be the most of use feature that they're introducing here with the options?
For me, I'd say point multipliers is probably where you can get the wonkiest. If you really want to. Now we don't have a lot of different stats to really putz around with at this point. Like blocking isn't worth it anything, well, because we're not tracking it, at least as of yet. So you got all that, but like think of it this way: think of when if in fantasy football you have a standard league and you have a PPR league. You have two different systems, or in one league, your deaths, like your kills, may count for double versus this league. So then you want to take a look at it differently and stuff like that. So the point multipliers can make a fifth round pick, a first round pick, and a first round pick, fifth round pick. Really. So like that I think could be the biggest, although I do also question how drastically with so few stats for us to work off of.
I'm actually really interested in the role restrictions, since I know between the three of us, typically our team captains would be one of our most important players every single week for who we were starting. And going forward, if we're going to go into a 2-2-2 plus, like in fantasy football, you have like your flex, like your wide receiver tight end, or like your running back tight end. So I'd be interested to see how that goes going forward, because there's so much less variety in the positions between 4 or 5 different offensive ones in football and then the 3 that we have for Overwatch.
Yeah, and I can see some situations where maybe they just have it where you have, a 2-2-2 mix with maybe like 3 on the bench, also being potential point scorers in that way. But like, it'll be nice in the bigger leagues if you want to have smaller roster sizes. But again, like with the way that the format is working this year in regards to the Overwatch League, that might not be the best course of action, just knowing how less often some teams are going to be competing with the new schedule. So things can get a little bit wonky this year on that end. So I highly recommend people look at the start times of the games, when their teams are playing, because it's going to be kind of all over the globe, all over, the clock at this point, especially in those games that are being held over in China, which there are quite a few this season. Now, next up, we have paid leagues being introduced. So commissioners will be given tools to help manage paid leagues. Now, really not a lot to this, Ed, but, when we talk about sports or fantasy sports, betting is always a thing that we are wanting to see. And, I am more than willing to put money on the line for buy-ins and everything like that. But what do you think paid leagues being introduced is going to bring to Fantasy Overwatch League this season?
You're going to get people who actually care about it after the first couple weeks. Because we saw that in every league across the board. People do the drafts, they're super excited for the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they're just they have no real incentive to come back. And to maybe not come back, but to continue getting their picks in every week or optimizing their rosters. This is going to get people back into it. If let's say we do a league, and this is something we'll probably do. Let's say we do a $50 league, $50 buy-in for this whole season, where the winner makes, $250, $300. People are going to be more interested with that. So it's definitely going to be something fun. Now, I'm also a little leery of this just because you're putting money on the line, and the stats have not been worked out well. And this is not even a High Noon Fantasy or any of the sites problem. This is the Overwatch League problem. Right. Imagine losing 1 week and you have money on it because the API isn't working for one of the maps you need to work. That's shitty. That sucks. So I'll be interested to see how that works.
Yeah, and on that note, too, just to piggyback off of that, with the format changes to the league and us removing that mandatory map 4 in a situation that is 3-0, you really need every map to count this season towards your stats, because there might be a lot of situations where we will see 3-0s.
Ed finally doesn't have to deal with the 5-0 the 3-2 curse anymore with his analytics.
God, I hated that.
So outside of that, we also have an activity log being introduced to the homepage of your league, so you'll be able to see, what player trades have been going on, any sort of transfers that have been done via the waiver wire. And this is definitely something that was needed here this past season, because we had no idea who was picking up players, who was dropping players, because there were a lot of times where, you'd be looking to, sign whoever just had a breakout performance, or let's say someone got injured or whatever, or they had a midseason sign-in. And then you look and you're just oh, I guess I just didn't get him. So always nice to know what is going on around the league. And this is something that is very common just across, fantasy sports as a whole. And it also kind of ties into, the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is fantasy alerts. So basically, you're going to be getting notifications whenever there is relevant news in regards to the Overwatch League when it comes to your league. So this will include things like if a player gets disciplined, if one of your players is on a bye week, or team in this case, and, things like that. So this is also going to kind of tie into the application, getting notifications that way. I'm assuming they're also going to have alerts set up on the website as well, because it would kind of be weird to have it tied in with one and not the other. But at least it gives us more of an opportunity now to know just what is going on around the league, and should something come up where we need to make an adjustment, we're actually going to have the information on hand rather than just hoping and praying that everything is going to work out and all of our players are going to play. And, I really hope that they're going to tie in any sort of social media posts for teams, especially when it comes to the starting lineup. Now, this is not something that every team was doing this past season, but to go back to this past season, like probably the team that did this or was more guilty of doing this more so than any other was the Seoul Dynasty, especially at the support position. So if it lets me know, like, hey, Jahan is going to start, that would be perfect, because who knows what the split time is going to be now that he is on the Titans this week. So Ramsey's like, how big of a change is this, really? Because, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, everything's going to be kind of, like, at the ready for you, whether you're at home, whether you're on your phone, and I'm assuming everyone has phones, at this point.
Oh, that was a good one. I know I personally fell victim to the aim god has to start today, right, guys? And then the starting lineup got released like 30 seconds before the game started. And it was Persia for the 4th week in a row. This is a really good thing. And I really do hope that we get those starting lineup tweets in the feed. If we could even like tailor the feeds as well to what information is like included or excluded as well.
Right.
That if that's something they can build on. And it'll be a lot easier to make that, because I know there were so many times on Thursdays where it would just be me going through Twitter, like scrolling, having to go through Reddit for like half an hour just to make sure I didn't miss anything. So
just
having
so
that
you could lose.
Just hey, I did okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you. To be fair, me and Totem's team was literally telling me like, so we're doing this. Do you have any complaints? And we going, nope. And then that'll be it. So.
Whereas I was like, Bob, stop picking people. Click, I'm picking Gaguri. For shit's sake, I'm out.
Yeah, it'll be really nice to have everything in the one feed. And maybe that's something we can talk to Soul Drink about next week, as far as if we could get those sorts of things in. Because I would imagine that team announcements like from the Twitter are already going to be there already.
Yeah, like that's probably one of my big questions for him next week is if you're gonna get like my player alerts, which would take some coding on a lot of coding on their back end to analyze who you have on your roster and then push relevant news about your roster to you. But yeah, that would be really cool. I mean, getting the ads, drops, transactions was my biggest request that they get, because that was brutal. Especially like knowing I got most of my pickups. Honestly, most of my pickups were not from the initial pickups. It was I would go in after,
right,
and just go through the list again and see who everyone dropped, or try and guess who people dropped, and pick people up that way. So yeah, it's one of those things where this is very much needed, but I think we need a little bit more clarification from Soul Drink next week on how this will work.
Absolutely. So another thing that they're introducing is gamification to High Noons. This is a way to basically earn badges and trophies for, doing things on the website, depending on, like, where you place in your leagues and everything like that. So kind of, like, pulling a little bit from what, Daily Fantasy Overwatch League was doing this past season, because that was a really big part of his vision at this point. And, I have to say, like, having, like, extra incentives to just log in, definitely added a bit more. They also, I don't know if this is gonna, like, tie into, like, being able to earn rewards by watching, like, Fantasy Overwatch League content. That's a possible, avenue to explore on that end, because we do have more foul shows that are, in the works now compared to where we were at here in the past season. But, like, how important is, like, these extra distractions, so to speak, for you guys? Like, do you really need the gamification aspects, or is just, like, the base platform enough for you guys?
I mean, I personally don't need it. It's not something like usually I'll pick whatever and just stick with it. I don't think I changed. Like I got a bunch of stuff on Fantasy OWL, but I stuck with what I originally got. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Some people it might be an incentive. To me, it's not so much. I don't know about you, Ramses.
It's nice. I mean, there are people who are gonna like it. It's not really what I'm there for, but more content on the site's always good.
Yeah, I feel like something that I want to see being introduced is like a player profile. Like this is something that they have on like Yahoo Sports, for example, where it will let you know what your like overall record is. And of course, like this is gonna tie more into like the head-to-head type league structures. But I want to see how I'm doing career-wise and like where I rank against the rest of the users on a platform. Like I don't know if they've been keeping track of that on the back end or anything like that. But it's nice to always know just what your overall win percentage is, either on a season-to-season basis or just how you've been doing since day number 1, just for those extra bragging rights. So yeah, like badges and trophies are nice, and technically they kind of already did trophies if you were like top 3 in like the unlimited leagues that they were doing here in the past year. But
did you get any of those trophies?
Me, yes, technically, I never got anything, and like I won one of the stages, but I never got anything.
So outside of that, they also recently have looked to bring in additional writers for their website. So they are going to make more of a push for on-site content analysis and just general fantasy Overwatch League information. And I'm pretty sure the plan is like we are going to be a contributor on that aspect. To what degree, I'm not 100% certain, but you might be seeing some articles from some of our hosts potentially on the website. But you know, I'm always looking forward to seeing what content is being produced in regards to Fantasy Overwatch League, because obviously, like, the more content you can consume, the better understanding you could just have about the game, about the systems in place, everything like that. So this is a welcome change, and I don't know how many writers they brought on. I think they might have only brought on 2 total. But you know, they definitely like started to make a push this last season to start to do articles and everything. And, you know, they're just looking to expand that a little bit further. So I want to see what stats we're going to be able to get from, you know, these new writers that they are bringing into the fold here.
Yeah, it will be nice to get some more articles. They started to do a little at the beginning of last season, but then kind of went downhill once you started to see a lot of the problems in regards to like points and all that fun stuff. But yeah, no, we will probably be putting some stuff out. Maybe we can have like a bi-weekly article of by Ednar, why I'm better than you.
Well, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Let me count the ways why I'm better than all of you.
Like what?
See, I was waiting for him to come up with something, and he didn't have
No,
anything.
I'm just going to be like,
head.
because I'm doing this, and you're probably doing this.
It should have just been like an article that is like blank for like 40 lines, and then whatever's written underneath is just in all caps, and then he just ends it there.
And then just a giant picture, like
your head.
Yeah, big forehead,
basically. So yeah, Soldiering did note like they are planning on launching some of these features closer towards the start of the season in February. Others will be launched once the season is underway. All that's going to depend on just how far along these features are right now. It seems like some of them are closer towards that alpha or beta phase than others. So hopefully we can get some clarification on that. But, you know, I don't think we need absolutely everything that's on here, like at the start of the season. But I feel like at the end of the day, the biggest things for just the overall state of Fantasy Overwatch League on this platform, you're primarily looking at the alerts and the activity log being the most important features being introduced this season. So I'm sure we're all in the same boat that out of everything here, those two need to be in from day one at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, like, we do have two other platforms. So if you guys have been listening to our show this past season, like, we did do a lot of daily fantasy Overwatch League on Fantasy OWL. And, this was a different format. Basically, they had more of, like, that DraftKings style of leagues. So, you would have like a player cost, you would have up to 100 points to spend crafting your team. And then, like every day there would be like featured leagues. And, we did have like Foul Play had a day each week for their league. OWL by the numbers, we had ours. And then, there were also a few other ones kind of in between. And, some of them did also include like prizes. Now, last season we ran host leagues throughout the year in daily. We were kind of like keeping tabs of how we were doing, and I want to do that again. I want to like track what our point totals are, how many wins we have against one another, things like that. And Ed, like I do want to bring back the budget league. Hopefully, we'll be able to set the budget without breaking some of the other scoring.
Mm-hmm. That would be fun. The budget league was a lot of fun. Maybe we can include Ramses this year. I don't know. He's not quite up to our level yet.
That way we can all draft Erster.
That's basically what it was. Every week we're like, Erster.
That is a fair point. So we'll bring back the 80 cap league. Maybe some weeks we'll open it up a bit more as a private contest. But again, like, Foul is going to be coming on the show January 21st, so let us know what updates they have in store. Because we honestly, we have no idea. Like, Foul has been pretty hush-hush about it, keeping his cards close to his chest, so I have no idea what features he is going to be introducing. But is there anything you guys can think of off the top of your head that you feel like need to be incorporated this season for the daily format?
Fantasy app, like an app, being able to put money on it. Those are the two big ones. Like really, with daily fantasy, you don't need to deal with transactions or ad drops because it's daily. So that, and you could also do something of when you join a league, and this is kind of a big wish, and I'll probably bring it up to him, is pick percentage of players. So you can see, like, if you're in a large league, you sometimes the best strategy is not to pick the same as everyone else. That generally is how you win. Is you're not picking the same as everyone else. So if everyone's like, there's top 3 players have 70% of the people are picking them up, well, maybe you don't want to pick them up. Type of situation. So I'd maybe have that, like, when you join a league or creating a roster for a league, it shows that. But
I want to pitch Foul for the Ramses Award of where you get third place the most times in one league. Because looking back on it, I finally saw his comment. I was going through through Foul's Discord. The amount of times where I would get just within distance of Ednar and then losing would be, I feel like I should get some sort of compensation for that. But as far as actual requests, I agree having all the news the same way High Noon would be great. I think having the pick percentage as well would be good, just so we know where everybody else is going, because then it helps you look for those players that aren't getting that same sort of attention, that are going to be cheaper.
And it encourages risks. And daily fantasy is a lot of times about taking that risk and having it work out. I mean, the amount of people that were taking Persia, because Persia was like nothing. Yeah, like I know I took Persia sometimes. I know Totem did too. Gargoyle was another one later on in the season.
Yeah, a lot of it was like based off of those players that were like 12 to 14 cost, where they would be putting up like 130, 140 points, and then you could, use that extra points towards a more like elite DPS player or an elite flex support.
I mean, I even picked Boink up for 8 points, and I got burned really hard by it. But like, it's risk. You're trying to pick up those guys who are.
There are risks, and then there's just pure stupidity.
Yeah, and like playing an Outlaws player, basically.
Especially one named Boink.
You're not wrong.
So there is another new platform that recently appeared. So we have a new challenger approaching in Fantasy Overwatch League, which is entirely app-based, and this is Draft Buff. Now, this is a newer platform by the looks of it. We're just entering like the Overwatch scene. Like, I know on their website they also listed the Call of Duty League and League of Legends, but I don't really know if those are something that's been ongoing already or if this is just brand new across the board. But looking through their website, they do have a website, but you can't actually like register any leagues or anything like it because everything is based on the app. But you can find info on the structure of the format. So this has a roster size that is 2 DPS, 2 tank, 2 support, and then it leaves 3 slots for bench players.
Yeesh.
They are tracking 4 different stats. So they're tracking kills, deaths, damage, and healing. So in regards to like a default league settings for how points are earned, you get 1 point per kill. You lose a point every time a player dies. And then you get 0.01 points per damage, as well as 0.01 points per healing. So this is like a head-to-head league structure. And then, of course, like if you have one of the top records, you advance to the playoffs. And it does look like they are working with, you know, free agent sign-ins and like a waiver wire. But like, I don't know if that's like coming soon, TM. But they do have trades enabled. So like we got some like bare bones information. But, you know, this is just another mobile opportunity or expansion for Fantasy Overwatch League. And, you know, like, we've kind of been talking about, like, what our plans are for a podcast. And, you know, it's pretty evident at this point that there is a pretty big need for mobile platforms out there. So I definitely want to operate at least one league on Draft Buff. I wouldn't want to use it as a newcomer being a primary tool that we're always on. But I want to just keep up with it to see basically like what's going on with them, if they're having any issues, should they arise, how things operate, all of that good stuff, and see like how we feel at the end of the season and kind of reflect on the year of the platform, maybe like how they had compared to some of the other new platforms that have come on, you know, in the prior years. So it's just another opportunity and another, you know, avenue for Fantasy Overwatch League players to potentially explore here for this upcoming season.
I mean, it's definitely like I can't really speak that much on this because, like you said, we don't know anything about Draft Buff. I'm definitely going to check it out. I'm definitely going to have a league. I'm sure we will have a league on there, maybe 2. Who knows? But I'm definitely going to check it out and see what it's all about. Because a lot of times, the whatever site has the best mobile app gets the most business.
That's why Yahoo's still in the game.
Yeah. Really, it is.
Mhm.
Yahoo Fantasy Football. Only reason that's relevant is because their app is decent. So yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
I'm attempting to load the app right now, and then I could give you guys some initial thoughts. But yeah, I'm interested to see that having such a small bench is a little scary on my end, at least. But I do think it kind of makes you be more decisive with what you're picking and who you actually have on your team. You can't afford to sit on somebody good.
Yeah, that means somebody. Yeah, like we'll talk about this when we talk about rookies. But yeah, it's one of those things where you really have to be smart about who you pick up. So Ramsey's, you're screwed.
Well, like, I look at the roster size having 9 players, and like, if you have a smaller league, that leaves a lot of good players potentially still on the board to get picked up on the waiver wire
Yes, that
at
does.
any
That
point.
does. Mhm. That is really nice, and also it's different because they're taking away points for deaths, which I don't know how I feel about it, but more than happy to check it.
That's a lot of static. I don't know who that's coming from.
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely Ramses.
way to go, Ramses! You screw up your fantasy league and our audio.
Is it still bad?
Useless.
Yeah, it's still being pretty bad. All right. Well, while he does that, he's gonna figure that out. So, in regards to podcast coverage, of course, like we do have some new podcasts that we do need to talk about. So, let's plug what Fantasy Overwatch League podcasts there are outside of ours, which is by far the best one. I mean, that's why you guys are here. So we got Follow Play, which is by High Noon Productions. That is hosted by Tepo Jamma, Heebie and from time to time also A Smith. And then we have 2 new entries. We have Fantasy Overwatch Underground, which is about 4 episodes in at this point, and this is by Dolky, who is probably a familiar foe if anyone had played Daily Fantasy Overwatch League this past season. And, I know he's brought a guest on for the first 4 episodes. I know I was on there for an episode. Flight Lice was on for an episode. Heebie was there. And I know Yiska actually was on this past episode. So definitely check them out. And then one of the newer faces on our network, from Overwatch League Network, Booger, recently started his own Fantasy Overwatch League show, which he's been doing on his Twitch channel. And that one is Picking Good Ones with Booger. And of course, he has a meme name, and I applaud him for it. And I think right now it's primarily available on his Twitch channel and maybe on YouTube. I don't think it's on podcatchers here as of yet. But his most recent episode was looking at his top 10 rankings at the tank position for 2020. So, going into the season, we have 4 Fantasy Overwatch League podcasts, and should another one arise, I will definitely let you guys know. And of course, it will also be added to our podcast directory of Overwatch Recall. So definitely go show them some love. So outside of that, really the only other thing I could really think of in regards to like additional resources is more stuff for like pick'ems and looking at like bet insights to see like who is favored. Should like a match be like too close for you to call? Like you could like go on and see what the bet insights have the odds at. So I know in the past, only for a couple of times, like I would look at something like Odds Portal as a potential avenue to see like which one had like maybe 2 teams that were both in the minus or only had like a 10-20 point differential, which could potentially mean like that would be the most likely one to see a map 5. Are there any other like resources that you guys have been using or that you guys can think of that could help craft your starting lineup or anything like that, whether it is tipping in one favor or another, be it player, be it team, or anything like that?
Not that I can think of. It's nice to have Odds Portal because there was one site last year that would have the odds, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was never really reliable or anything like that. So yeah, this is nice. Right now, I would not recommend putting money down on games, just for the simple fact of like we talked before, the points, the scoring can really do you in. But if you're just betting on who wins, who loses, then go right ahead. So, but yeah, this is a good site. I will not sign up for it though. I will get into trouble. So, and sports gambling is illegal in Wisconsin, and I don't do it.
Never. But I know on Push the Point, we'll sometimes look at Bovada for just the odds on stuff. But again, I haven't really checked as far as accuracy or I guess with consistency on the platform. Generally, I think it's really petty, but I'll end up going through like different players like Twitch streams or different like players like Twitters. Just if it's somebody who like I'm really kind of iffy on the fence with, just kind of what their week or so has been like, what their general mood is.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's what I used like that's what I used a lot for like for the Aim God saga of whether or not I was going to start him before I ended up dropping him because you get these responses like, "Oh, you're looking good in scrims, feeling good in scrims, like we're scrimming," and then it would be Thursday and he's gone. So there's a lot small avenues of information.
Yeah, so it's primarily more towards tipping in regards to pick'ems. In most cases. So with that being said, let's move on and let's move into our main discussion. And we want to take a look at some of the newer players that are entering the league as rookies in 2020. So I want to take a look at each role. We'll go through the tank players, the support players, as well as the damage dealers, now that those are a thing that exist because of, the introduction of role lock in Stage 4. So yay for that, and, not having to deal with a ton of people beating Zarya and Rigjail that or maybe better suited at DPS, even though they didn't show up at that role. Cough, cough. Looking at you, EQO, Carpe, primarily. So let's start with the top tank players of the rookie class. Now, I will say, like, Ed and I, we were talking pre-show about who we would consider to be, like, top 5 in this case. And Ed, you and I were pretty much, like, player for player on the same mindset at this point. So what I want to do is I want to just go through. We will name 2 players, and should want to be a duplicate. Like you could either kind of piggyback off of that and further analyze that, or select another option. So I want to start with you. Who were some of the players that you were looking at to break out as rookies at the tank position in Fantasy Overwatch League this season?
So tank was probably the hardest position for me to pick because honestly, right now we don't know who's playing Sigma. That's the biggest trick. So taking into account who we know will play Sigma and who does no competition, my top 2. And I know I'm stealing probably both of yours, or at least one. Hawk from the Atlanta Reign, because he's going to be playing Sigma. We saw that in Contenders Gauntlet. So him, and then Krong from the Guangzhou Charge. Just simply because there's no other flex tank on the roster to compete with him. So it's like, well, you're the starting flex tank, whether you're playing Sigma or not, you're not getting taken out. So those would be my top 2. Hawk, if Hawk really is playing Sigma, I think Hawk could, in theory, be a top 5 tank.
Yeah, I think for Hawk, I would put his ceiling probably at 3rd on the high end.
He could be this year's Choi Oben. He could be.
Yeah, I know. I'm really bullish on Hawk as well. He's in my top 2 list. The other one I thought, because truth be told, I forgot about Krong. I'm sorry. The other one, the person I was thinking about as well was Bernard. I think London's a team that, again, if everything hits, could be a pretty decent team. I also know he's going to be the starter no matter what. He will be playing Sigma, and he will be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think if he and Glister can feed off of each other well enough, I think he'll do well. To be honest, I'm not sure how well the rookies are going to do compared to your more established tanks. But I feel pretty good about Bernard being like a mid-tier, low upper.
Okay. Yeah, Bernard, coming from Fusion University, it's kind of hard to rank where he is as a player, just because on that team, dating back to when they were in NA and didn't shit the bed over in Korea during that whole experimentation, There were a lot of key players at each position, so it was kind of hard to pinpoint what the strongest points of that team were, because they were really just a unit through and through. So like I feel like when we're comparing someone like Bernard to Alarm, I don't want to say like there's a night and day difference where Alarm is like the clear favorite, but with London having a lot of these unknown players on this team, because a lot of these players, like at least 3 or 4 of them, were coming out of like sister teams or from tier 3. And, I will say, like, Bernard has a lot of raw talent, as does Glister. But I'm not sure if London, when we compare them to, like, London being, like, one of the bottom teams to many people, like, is that going to be the team that will be the shit team that does great at Fantasy Overwatch League, or is it going to be a team like the Valiant, who are also kind of like that budget type status going into 2020?
That's something where I think I'm realizing is that by and large, the rookie, because unfortunately we're pretty much skipping main tanks because we just don't know how the scoring, their scoring does not look good at first glance. Most of the rookie starting off tanks that are worth a look are all on bottom 25% teams. Your Valiant, like I love McGravy, but Valiant, you have Brucin or Mufin with the Uprising. And then you have Bernard on London. I just don't feel super great as far as like there's no other rookies that are starting on any higher teams besides Hawk. So that's why Hawk, I think, is an automatic number 1 as far as rookie off tanks.
Yeah, the other name that definitely comes to mind for me, granted he can't play 2 games out of the season, is Hanbin, who was picked up by Paris Eternal from Element Mystic. Now, Paris Eternal won that Element Mystic lottery, as unlikely of a landing spot as it was. Really, no one was predicting that at the time, but, they added Smex, they added Hanbin, and out of those 2, knowing that they have started to shift more towards the Korean front, you can expect Hanbin to start 26 out of the 28 games this season on Paris Eternal, and that's another team that I've kind of struggled with, like, trying to figure out what sort of ceiling this team is going to have. But there's a lot of hype behind the Korean talent on the Eternal as a whole. And I have a little bit more faith in Paris than I do, say, the Justice in regards to the tank line, just because it's not completely like a rookie tank line entering the season for the first time like it would be with like Ellie Vote and Lulsish. Now, outside of that, like another potential rookie breakout is Bianca, who was promoted from XL2 Academy, which is defunct at this point, to the New York Excelsior roster. And, this one's kind of a weird one because we don't know who's going to be starting. So this one can honestly go either way. They also picked up, Hotba during the offseason, who, in Fantasy Overwatch League was honestly pretty consistent throughout the entirety of the season as a member of the Guangzhou Charge. And I know, like, there was a lot of talk about, well, how is Hotba going to be once he's not able to show off as much flexibility with the introduction of Rollock? And we didn't really see too much of a decrease in his overall point totals at that point in Stage 4. So that one's kind of like up in the air for me, but I feel like with New York, this is a team that is looked to filter in their Korean talent from their academy team. So I feel like for that reason, like, I'm expecting Bianca to get the nod in this case. So he's another potential standout in regards to the tank players to keep an eye on. But, at the end of the day, it's important to note, like, what we're seeing currently in the tournaments that have been going on during the offseason. Yes, there have been a lot of changes to the way that shields work in the game. They made some tweaks to the armor, but we still are seeing a ton of Orisa and a ton of Sigma. And if last season, specifically Stage 4, taught us anything, it's that the Sigma players are going to be the carries on the tank line in regards to fantasy points So as soon as we get a clear vision of who is on that role, you'll have a better idea of who to start and who to look for in regards to setting your lineups, be it, in your unlimited drafts, in your daily leagues, or just, your normal head-to-heads in this case. But moving on, we also have a lot of good supports coming into the Overwatch League this season. So, Ramses, I'm going to throw this one to you. Who are some of the names that are coming to mind in regards to the current meta right now? Which, honestly, it's hard to say, what the divide is going to be on points between main support and flex support, knowing that there is a ton of Baptiste Zenyatta pairs running around in these tournaments.
Well, and for that reason, someone's going to bring up Alarm. It's not going to be me, but I'm really bullish on Funny Astro because of his Baptiste play and because of his hyper aggressiveness. So I think when you have a team that is as stacked as Philly, where the pressure isn't going to be on him to have to carry, I think he's going to be in there doing a lot of healing, getting a lot of damage. I am very eager to see where he ends up. I also have Gangnam Jin from the Florida Mayhem as well, just because I want to. Florida was a team last year who had a couple people like your Gargoyles and mostly Gargoyle, as far like people who had pretty decent score lines. There were a couple weeks where Hagapun, who was his predecessor at the position, even put up some decent points. I think Gangnam Jin's going to be. I have upside on him. I think, as with Florida as a whole, I think they have upside. And the other one would be Myunbong from Boston, just because.
Are you just going to list all of the rookies at this point?
There's a bunch more. No, it's 3.
No, you brought up Alarm first.
Okay, I'm done. Then you can have it. All right.
So Ramses, I want to ask you this: how the hell did someone of Myunbong's talent end up on a team like Boston?
No, did you? So Sideshow talked about it apparently that so other people were trying to negotiate with Myunbong's agent, and they were trying to pretty much. Huck went straight to the team and said, "Hey, I'll give you this is my offer," and the team was like, "Oh, well, we haven't heard any offers yet because they've all been going to Myunbong's agent instead. So okay, here's a lowball offer. We'll take it." So master negotiator.
They kind of lucked out then. Is basically what you're saying.
A little bit. I see Ed's face of disapproval right there.
No, it's like, all right, I'll talk about the one person I have left on my list. Is Creative from Soul Dynasty. He's their starting flex support. I mean, even if you're not as sold on Creative as a support player, he's going to put up good numbers, because he's surrounded by a phenomenal team.
I would say, in regards to his projections, he would probably mirror someone like Guido or like Hagopen.
But he has no chance of losing his spot.
Right.
Unless they sign somebody else.
We are hearing rumors that they're going to pick up Bedosian.
Which they could do. Which in that case, then yes, I would move Creative down. But the roster right now, Creative is the only flex support. They only have 2 support players on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
So Creative right now is the starting flex support for a top 10 team. And that's going to produce numbers. Whether he's awesome or not, I mean, you said Hagopen. Well, he was the starting flex support on a bottom 3 team. Mm-hmm. Guido was a flex support on a bottom 3 team. This is a starting flex support on a top 6-7 team. So, there's a little bit of a difference there. So, Creative actually was my number 1. Ahead of Alarm, I had Creative.
Okay.
So,
who do you have?
Well, I will say, I did put Alarm. I think that one was pretty self-explanatory. 1, because of the team he's on. 2, because when you look at the prodigies that have come into the league this year, and there are quite a few of them, Alarm, dating back to his days in Fusion University, was always hyped up as Jonak level. And, we're in a Zenyatta meta right now, so I expect Jonak to put up more points. I expect Alarm to come in. I will admit, like, I do have my reserves about Funny Astro. Like, on the Fusion, I have more concerns about that than maybe even Sato at this point, just due to the fact that Funny Astro fed a lot when he was on Lucio primarily on the Atlanta Reign this past season. So Alarm is just gonna frag out. So I expect him to be dealing a lot of damage, getting a ton of eliminations, regardless of what role he's gonna pick up. But I would expect him to be the Zenyatta player in this case. But there are another couple of people that do kind of stick out, and I don't know how I feel about the Valiant supports. They're kind of like lesser known players in many ways. So like maybe a safer pick would be like Leisure Gone from the Shanghai Dragons. But like I'm not sure if that's gonna be a starter on that team or not, just because like they still have some other players that they could flex in. So like I'm just trying to see like who else like rookie wise I even had in like my top 30 rankings, and the only other person I see listed is Wea from the Guangzhou Charge, who is kind of a weird player because like he's played not only flex support but also flex tank. So honestly, I don't even know where where he's going.
That is We Are the Champions.
Oh yes, that is right.
Well, and that's if he gets out from behind Shu as well.
Yeah, and that's important to note too, because like
Shu.
It's important to note, like even dating back to last season, everyone was not expecting to have Shu be as good as he was, and he basically overtook another player for that spot, and really never let up at that point. Which is why One Shine Lee ended up leaving the team, or I think it might have even retired, if I'm not mistaken. So a little bit less options rookie-wise in regards to the Class 4 support. But if there's one particular position that doesn't have a shortage, it is the DPS dealers. So Adam, I'm going to throw this one to you. We have a lot of young talent, just turned 18, entering the league. A lot have had a lot of hype based off of success at the academy level. Some have just shown promise in other platforms like the Overwatch World Cup. Who are some of the DPS players that you're looking at to really thrive in 2020 out of this rookie class?
All right, so the top two for me is number one, I think is the obvious one for all of us, and that is Leave.
Woo!
Leave is just... He's one of those. He's a countdown. He's awesome. He's what I think everyone kind of expected Flower to be when he came up.
Mm-hmm.
But Leave is number one for me. I'm very excited to see him play. Number two is Doha. Whatever. DPS for the fuel. Right. To go with my boy Decay. So Decay, Doha are like. Whew, that is going to be scary. Those are probably the two best, like rookie DPS players that can actually play for the majority of the season available out there. Now, with that said, there's definitely more rookies out there, but Leave and Doha I think are going to be the two standouts in this rookie class, and I would not be surprised if one of them becomes a top echelon talent and a must pick. I'm a little higher on Doha than most though. But
yeah, I will say my one note about Leave is this is a player who is coming into the World Cup and played like 21, 22 heroes. But he could only play one at a time. But like I always look at Leave as someone who is kind of like a reverse Surefour in the sense that he's willing to play anything, and you could realistically peg him as a top 10 player at that character. So the ceiling for him as a player, the longevity of his career, how much potential he has towards, points, is pretty damn high. So he's definitely going to be towards the top of my list as well. But I want to hear from Ramses. Who are some of the other rookies that you're eyeing at DPS?
So I kind of went boomer bust with my rookies for this because I agree. Leave is the big one. Sparkle's obviously the big one.
Even though he only plays 12 games.
Near the end, you're not going to draft Sparkle. Don't draft.
No,
Sparkle.
you're not drafting Sparkle.
But,
unless it's your last pick. A very late pick.
The two that I'm really interested in, number one's going to be Mirror from the LA Gladiators. Really, really solid projectile player who, so despite whatever happens with Bird Ring, who I personally am not super high on, I think Mirror is going to end up being a consistent part of that team. And because he gets to play with a top 5 support line, I would argue, like, based off of pre-rankings, a top 5 tank line. And the pressure's not going to be on him to 100% carry the entire time. So I like him a lot. And then the other one, I have to bring it back up. The other one I've been feeling really good with is I've been hearing a lot of good things. Again, this is everything has to hit. So I'm going to get burned by this hella hard. But the hype I've been hearing kind of building about Glister being a very big carry for the London Spitfire. If Glister ends up being able to turn it on and be consistent, I think we could look at another Corey situation where you have one guy who's just dragging a team behind him on his back. So those are the two I'm looking at. They're more. I'm going to stop talking about other players so they don't incidentally get mentioned. But those two are guys I'm really interested in seeing. What about you?
Oh, I definitely am a huge fan of Glister, be it from the Dynasty Academy team on Gen G. There's a lot of interesting players this year. You have Edison and Sharp on Atlanta Reign this year. Airster and Edison are probably going to be the starting duo, so I would peg Edison as a potential breakout. But I'm a little worried that he's not going to be able to live up to the hype. Because I know there are a lot of expectations on him, and there are hefty expectations as a whole on the Atlanta Reign this season as a potential championship team to a lot of people, even being top 5 in most power rankings that I've seen so far. Outside of that, I'm looking at Yaki from the Florida Mayhem, who is going to get paired potentially either with Saya Player or BQB. Obviously, there's been a lot of attention being drawn from Runaway, and part of that's due to the success of the Vancouver Titans. Part of that is also due to the success that they have had even beyond the call-ups and restructure of that team, and just how much raw talent they have across the board. But if I had to look at, like, the other ones on here, if you're looking for, like, a boomer bust potential, and I don't know if he'll have the starting spot on this team, but who are you has been someone that has been labeled as a prodigy and been hyped up for several years at this point. And I look at him and Libero, and I feel like that DPS duo as a whole probably has more flexibility than any other duo that you can make up in the league, maybe even surpassing Airster and Edison at this point on the Atlanta Reign. So, like, that would be, like, my boomer bust player. But there are a ton of, great talent this year, some of which we haven't even mentioned, like Lip from the Shanghai Dragons, who popped off during the Shanghai Invitational, and God forbid us if Lip and Fleta get paired together. Like, the Dragons' DPS combinations this year are looking pretty nasty across the board. But I have to say, like, the influx of talent this year has me really excited. I feel like this has been probably the best situation in regards to rookies that we have seen. And we can't count the inaugural season because obviously everyone at this point was a rookie. But I feel like this year is more stacked compared to what we got in the 2019 season.
Does Krillin technically count as a rookie because we never saw him play?
Well, technically, yeah, if he hasn't seen the stage or hasn't played a single map, I mean, I guess technically he would be.
Can you imagine if Krillin comes out there and he's like a Jonak level flex support they've just been sitting on this entire time?
We can only hope. Yeah, London's definitely going to be one of the stranger teams to watch this year. Probably in similar fashion like Boston Uprising and the LA Valiant, with the magnitude of the team restructure that we have seen, because there's a lot of teams that just got blown up and essentially started from scratch at this point. So with that being said, again, like, we are working on aggregate rankings, so stay tuned for more information on that. They should be out within the next couple of weeks, and we'll talk about the averages and everything like that. So we'll let you know. We're probably not going to go over like the top 30, 30, and 40 on the podcast. Maybe we'll do like top 5, top 10, potentially, for a specific show. But with that being said, guys, we are getting pretty close to like an hour 20 at this point. I do want to, have enough time to talk about the rookie class. Obviously, next week we'll be diving deeper into highnoon.gg as a fantasy platform and provider. Let you know what they have in store. So we will be hearing from Soul Drink on that front. But with that being said, we are going to close out the show for tonight. So for starters, if you guys want to help us out, one of the best things to do is to head over to iTunes, leave us and write us a review. We are always looking for feedback on how we can improve the show. And, any words of encouragement, or, let us know, like, what you want to see incorporated into the podcast. We're always open ears on that front. So, reach out to us. Let us know how we are doing. If you would like to find additional Overwatch-related content, we do have Overwatch Recall, which is our content hub, where you can find basically like Overwatch League, Path to Pro, Fantasy Overwatch League podcasts on our website. And then every Sunday night, I release the Weekly Recall, which is an episodic listing of all their prior week's episodes from all the different podcasts. So keep up with all the latest on Twitter at OW Recall. Now, Ramses, of course, we also have different ways how, people can support us outside of that. So why don't you go ahead and, plug our Patreon, because we got some recent news there.
For sure. If you want to lend some additional support to the network, or just you have a favorite show you want to back up, the best thing you can do is hitting us up on the Patreon. The tiers start at just $1 a month. And you can find the Patreon and all the information you need at patreon.com/Owl Network. Ed's making faces at me. I'm sorry. And
he's doing that on purpose to try to throw you off.
You too can join the likes of our Master and Above patrons, which I'm seeing we have a couple more than last time I looked. Ed. You can join the likes of our Master and Above patrons, including Blazin' Bob, Brendan, Josabel. It's been a while.
Jay-Z.
Owl, Jay-Z, Owl, Kesha, and Agent Life in helping the network grow.
Absolutely. So, any little bit helps, guys, on that front. Ed's trying to control himself and not really being successful at that. So with that being said, Ed, why don't you go ahead and let our listeners know how they can get a hold of us, and we'll see whether or not Ramses is going to try to one-up you on that front.
All right. Considering I have his screen minimized right now, he can't do anything.
So you cheated. Okay.
Yeah. So you can reach us through email at contact@owlunshow.com. You can reach us on Twitter, and that's at OWL by the numbers. We do have a website where we post all this fun stuff at www.owlunshow.com. We do post all our stuff on YouTube at youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. Come over there on Discord and harass us all at discord.me/OWLNshow. We are streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLNshow. So we are Twitch affiliates. So help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network amount of content. That is not my face. Our podcast network does stream pretty regularly. So Overwatch League Network airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. The show OWL by the Numbers now airs Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific when Ramses is on time. Heroes Never Die airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then host streams, when available, run on a flex schedule. So be sure to follow us on Twitch and in Discord to know when we are going live. As Ramses had pointed out, we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/OWL Network. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Edinar Overwatch and Edinar on Twitch at twitch.tv/Edinar. I got that right.
Eventually,
Ramses, where can they find you?
You can find me at Ramses_OW, and I have a random question of the week specifically to Ed. So Ed, you know what? I can't believe it. It's been almost a month. You and I have not talked about Rise of Skywalker yet.
Okay.
So spoilers for everybody, I guess.
Okay.
Spoilers, I guess, for everybody. So in the last movie, pretty much, didn't Snoke? Wrong. So Snoke made fun of Kylo Ren and was like, only little baby boys wear a helmet, and smashed his helmet on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the Emperor, who's been controlling Snoke this whole time, just remade his helmet and gave it back to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? That's stupid.
Well, you got to remember that Snoke was actually a clone, not anything like that. So Snoke was just a little baby bitch himself.
Oh, okay. So there's a middle bitch in the middle.
Yeah, there's
Right.
And you know what? You know, Palpatine created Anakin Skywalker, who turned into Vader, who had to have the helmet. So why not have another person with a helmet? And it looked badass.
Oh, I love the helmet. I was just more mad that like helmets are stupid, and the next movie like, nah, helmets are great. Like the flip flop on there. But you can find me on Twitter at Ramses_OW. You can find the show I do with Labosco at pushpointpod. And yeah, Totem, where can they find you at?
Well, you can also find me on Twitter at TotallyDrunkCTR. And I am streaming Monday, Wednesday, Thursday on Twitch. Returning tomorrow on that end at twitch.tv/TotallyDrunk. So with that being said, guys, I do want to thank you again for joining us for our return episode of OWL by the Numbers. This has been episode number 33. I've been your host, Totally Drunk, joined, as always, by my co-hosts of Edinar and Ramses, and we'll see you guys back, hopefully tomorrow night, for the next episode of Heroes Never Die. The flagship show. Take care. And
Peace
have a
out,
good
y'all.
Later.